Protectors Unite. This week, we're celebrating the podcast of podcasts.
Welcome to the Circuit Magazine, the #1 source of information on protection matters, the industry-leading magazine for all security professionals who want to stay ahead of the game.
Podcast of podcasts. EP, what a great world. I'm here with Elijah Shaw, and we're going to think about our fantastic forthcoming joint collaboration with Conversations in Close Protection and also Spencer Coursen. It was great fun. Elijah, would have been great to have you on there. What we were trying to do was looking at how different sections of the EP industry can collaborate and how there's enough space for everybody. What would you have, said had you been on that session?
Yeah, I mean, I was really bummed out. And I remember when we were first kicking the idea back and forth and, we were going to have this kind of a Lord of the Rings or One Ring to Rule Them All conversation, or the Marvel Infinity War, where everybody comes together and, we had the Avengers and the Fantastic Four and the Guardians of the Galaxy. I've got a lot of pop culture references going on right now, but it was a great concept. Unfortunately, it was tough for all of us to get our schedules in play, and on the date that we finally were able to lock everything in, my travel schedule got pushed up. So I was on a plane to Africa when you guys were talking. So I hate I missed it, but of course I got to catch the replay, and I enjoyed the conversations. And my input would have echoed the rest, which is in terms of the basic themes, and that's the collaboration piece, the piece that we can be collaborators as opposed to competitors, that we can exchange information and exchange audiences, and it's for the better of our industry and our community. I listen to those guys and I enjoy those guys, and from their feedback, they listen to the things that we do and then we put out, and we all support each other. And that's amazing, because in our industry, there's a lot of infighting and there's a lot of, trying to, climb up that ladder and be the best at a certain thing. And if you're the best, that means nobody else can be in that space. But I don't believe that's necessary. And of course, you can want to win and you can want to push your brand or your idea forward so that way you can achieve whatever it is your goals are. It just doesn't have to be at the detriment to anyone else. So anyway, I think us coming together and kind of, setting the tone and showing the industry that, hey, here are guys that are doing similar things, and then we can be supportive of each other's things. We can enjoy each other's things, and we can recommend each other's things in their endeavors. And for seasoned people that are in the industry, it might make them go, hey, I don't have to look at everything as a winner-take-all competition. And for new people coming in the industry, we can kind of set the stage and say, if these guys, can have this great camaraderie amongst each other and respect each other and promote each other's projects, et cetera, why would I have to look at someone as my enemy, for lack of a better term?
Absolutely. And the way in which they have helped us, and we hopefully, I would have liked to think, have helped them, I think it's a real testament to that. Chuck Randolph and Chris Story, they've been great friends of my events and our work. And of course, we made a nod. We said, hats off to them. They started Conversations in Close Protection. It's got a different flavor from the Circuit Magazine podcast. Sure. Yeah. But therein, we find ourselves complementary. And similarly, Spencer Coursen with his book, The Safety Trap, he's trying to be a trainer. He's trying to educate people, again, in a different way. So it was a real privilege to be there. I felt a little bit like a fraud because out of everybody, I'm the guy that organizes events, right? I organize
Which is
events.
The glue. We need that,
Well, thanks. That's kind of you to say, because I was on there, and you will hear this. Everyone's saying, of course, when we were in the military, and I'm like, yeah, not me. But in all fairness, John Moss was there, and he represented that side, and it was nice to see the interplay between everybody. And I think, especially during these last 12 months, there's an appetite for saying, hey, we have had a tough and interesting and sometimes, maybe a lonely ride, but this kind of cross collaboration has kept us going.
Absolutely. And let me just say that to that point there, a big majority of our listeners, I'm sure, are aware of my individual brand, which is Icon. And I have to take that entire brand and kind of put that on my back. And I have to figure out the vision of the company and the direction of the company and work with our clients, et cetera. And that can be kind of a lonely job. So when I have the ability to work with you guys, with the British Bodyguard Association, and from an organizational capacity, when we come together and create the Circuit magazine and the Circuit podcast, I was talking to John about this just a couple of weeks ago. That's like a breath of fresh air for me, because again, we get to exchange these ideas, bounce things off of each other, say, hey, does this work? Hey, does that work? What do you think about this? Oh, I was successful in doing this. You should look at this. And that's great for me. It's actually fun for me. And so for us to kind of, in my eyes, duplicate that model. And when Chris reached out to me about this idea, I loved it, because yes, let's do that in other sectors. This podcast that I listen to, and these two gentlemen that I respect quite a bit, and of course, including Spencer here, when I hear that we can do some things together that will benefit the industry as a whole, it also benefits me personally, because it's enjoyable.
Enjoyable it is. And well, I don't want to completely duplicate what you said, but ditto, right? The last year, they invited me on to talk about why on earth I organize events in this space. Maybe it was a little bit of hostile reconnaissance. I don't know, but I was honest. And one of the things I said in that little segment was, you know what? If anybody wants to set up an event, go for it, whatever.
Sure.
And then Clubhouse came along, and then Zoom exploded, and people are using these platforms, and they are doing it, and yet it makes the community better. Right. It really does. So it's a shame. We could have brought on Sean West as well, but then maybe would have been a bit too heavy from the circuit side. But we're going to have to do a podcast of podcasts again. Bring in more people from more sectors. I'm certain that they need it.
Infinity War 2. That's what that is. It's an end game.
Yeah. Okay, Thanos. All right.
That works, right?
Just one click. And of course, there's lots of female operators that we definitely need to have onto that next time. I know Monica Dupreez is hosting a lot of stuff on Clubhouse, and I'm sure Jackie Davis would relish the chance to get on loads of other people, because if we are truly to do the gauntlet, the session of sessions, that would be amazing.
Let's do it. All right, I'm with it.
Well, let's hear from John Moss, Chris Story, Chuck Randolph, Spencer Coursen, and yes, I was there too. Let's hear the podcast of podcasts, Conversations in Close Protection, the Safety Trap, and the Circuit magazine.
One ring to rule them all.
Well, here we are with Executive Protection Supercast. We are joined, or we have a group of amazing people to talk about all things executive protection in the industry. John, Spencer, Phelim, Chris, and myself. And it's an agnostic podcast in which we want to talk about what drives us, what gives us passion, what we're working on, who we service, and of course, what we have coming up for our own efforts and for the industry. So why don't we just kind of kick it off and have folks kind of introduce themselves, where they are, what they come from, and what they support. John, can we start with you?
Yeah, sure. All right. So I'm here representing the circuit, I guess, for the most part. The circuit, now the podcast, now the magazine, now events, and now some training as well. So we started life back in 2008 as a newsletter, grew into a magazine. It's been going quite well since, and we've made the rather rash decision in light of a few other good podcasts we've seen doing quite well in the industry, and have jumped on the podcast bandwagon. and it's been a ride. We're enjoying it. It feels like a busy space, but I'm led to believe it's going to get even more so, and I know from my own podcast consumption, they just can't come out fast enough. It's my number one source of probably both entertainment and information at the moment, so we're trying to put a little bit out there ourselves and hope that we can add some value into the mix.
Nice.
Absolutely.
Nice. How long have you guys been doing it, John?
Which the podcast?
Yeah, I mean, and you guys are firing out content.
Yeah, so we started the podcast at the beginning of the year, and then we're like at, so 4 months down the road now. We're still in the learning stage, we're still in the making mistakes, listening. But, listening back to episode 1, I'm like, wow, we've come on a long way. That curve is steep.
Yeah, that tends to happen. You're like, oh God, that was so bad. Well, I know that I do with ours, right? Like, oh my God, what were you talking about?
No, you're totally right.
But there always seems to be something always comes up that's really of interest. I mean, sometimes you think, and then you start talking about a subject. Next thing you know, you're deep into it and pulling out insights. So what you guys are doing, John, you guys have been putting out some great stuff.
Yeah, well, it's partly by design that we've got, we're bringing on guests every week. And we're trying not to fill the airwaves with too much of, this is true of me anyway. I'm trying not to fill the airwaves with too much of my own voice. I want to hand that space over to, other folks who can chip in. And I think most people appreciate that.
Yeah.
Agree.
Yeah, we try to do the same. And the circuit's been around, you said, since 2008, right?
Yeah, that's right. The circuit started as a simple newsletter for the British and North American bodyguards associations. And there was not much information coming out back then at kind of the operator level. So you had a lot of corporate, a lot of city stuff. But the industry was ballooning as well, as you guys know, post 9/11, a lot of new hotspots around the world. And suddenly we had this massive influx, especially in the UK, of people leaving the military, leaving the services and going out to places like Afghanistan and Iraq. And, there was a huge demand, but there wasn't a lot of information. There wasn't a lot of standards. There wasn't much in the way of direction.
Yep.
And so we were in a position where we kind of had contacts on both sides of the wire. So we knew people already in the industry. We knew where the jobs were. We knew where there was a need for well-trained, highly skilled guys. And we knew those guys. So we started joining the two ends together. And then we realized that, there was more. There was still more needed. There was a lot of shortcoming. And so it's been a bit of mission creep, to be honest. It didn't set out to be what it is today. And that's great in many ways. That's a lot down to our membership, our readers and subscribers telling us what they want and need, and hopefully we've listened.
Nice.
Hey, John, the Circuit podcast is great. I'm a big fan of it. I'm curious to know from the European context, with most of the people that you are interviewing on the close protection side of the house, are most of them former military, former police, or are there people like in the United States where they're able to come up with more of just a more civilian background, but learn the job and do the job well?
Yeah, totally. That's a great question for our podcast, certainly, because the backgrounds of people that we invite onto the show are very diverse, and that's very deliberate. We gravitate, certainly speaking for myself, gravitate towards similar folk, our kin, our peers, and I can sit down very comfortably and have an easy conversation with people who look like me, right? Who have similar backgrounds,
right?
Followed, a similar path. And the conversation will flow. I won't necessarily feel challenged or out of my depth. But look, who's going to learn anything from that, right? It might be interesting for the first 5 or 10 minutes. So what we try to do is bring people onto the show who can inform me. And I feel I'm a pretty good avatar for a large portion of the industry. And as you know, with our podcast, we've got 4 of us. And I think if, across the board, we're answering our own questions, scratching our own itch, then I think that probably means we're doing that, certainly for the rest of our subscribers and listeners. And of course, now that we're up and running, we're starting to get that feedback, and we're starting to hear, what else do people want to hear from? Who else should we bring onto the show? And it's been quite organic like that. But yeah, so not military necessarily, not the services, just people who can offer something right now to the people who are listening to our show.
Yeah, and I don't want this to be the Spencer and John show, but I really enjoyed that episode. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he ran the Butler School, and you guys had a really great conversation.
Simeon Rosette.
Yes, yeah, but you guys had a really great conversation about how the protector side and the staff side can work together, and I thought that was a really good, description of how the two service industries can coincide.
Yeah, and you've pulled a great one out there, Spencer. That I really enjoyed. I didn't take part in that interview, and as I listened back to it, I really enjoyed it, and it was great. In particular, we've got Pelham here, who's our anchor man. He's the rock behind everything and the consistency. But we had Sean on that particular one, and Sean has got a lot of experience sitting with the butlers late at night. He's been the operator for many, many years, and he's suffered the same pains. And it was great just to listen to those guys sharing, those real life examples of what it's like on the job. And, for a particular type of client, and that's something that not all listeners might have experienced yet. And so I think it's good to be prepared for that kind of stuff. And I remember myself, in that particular instance, the first time that I had interactions with the butler, I was unprepared. I didn't know how important these people were, So if I'd had the opportunity to listen to this podcast beforehand, I think I might have, my game might have been a little bit different.
Yeah,
awesome.
I made a similar mistake the first time I joined, like a true executive protection team, and I made the mistake of saying just a secretary describing someone's executive assistant. And man, you make that mistake once.
All information ceased
once. Yeah, you want to know what a gatekeeper, how fast a gatekeeper can cut you off.
Yeah.
Wow.
Did you see?
Immediately regret that.
I wish I could have captured. I will have to go back right now and look at everyone's reaction when you said I made the mistake of, and you said the EA, and everyone was like, "Oh God."
It's like it was such an F&G move. Such.
Whoops. That's the funny thing is that's what it tends to become is the protective agent is like, hey, I'm here, I'm the person, and you have no awareness of really what goes on in your orbit, and you're like, hey, I'm here to save the day, everybody, stand back. The bodyguard's here, and as you're new, you have no idea of the inner workings of a corporate site, of a family office, or anything. And I think those things are helpful. So you talked about your cleanup guy, your rock, Pelham. All right, so Pelham's like one of the busiest men in the protective space. I would say
he is the busiest man in the protective space.
International man of mystery. And so I'm going to go to Pelham and ask, who is the circuit mag? Because you mentioned there's 4 of you, and I want you to be able to introduce who those folks are. And once again, Pelham, I agree, right? You're everywhere in the security space and doing great things. So,
and yet,
I know that those folks are happy to have you.
And yet, I'm not an expert in security. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, well, I would just want to interject here.
I think it's called a linchpin, Pelham. I think it's called a linchpin, sir.
You can't say that anymore.
Yeah, you can't say that anymore. That's you've used that. You've used that for quite a number of years now, and I think you probably know as much as anyone. It's nice. From my point of view, working with Pelham, it's been great. He can ask the questions, that I either shy away from, or I think I probably should know the answer to this. So this is going to make it more difficult. Whereas Pelham can just wade in there and he can just come out with the best questions.
It's mainly because I don't know the answer. So I think, if I asked Spencer a question or Chuck a question, Chris a question, John a question, I'm in end effect trying to live vicariously as a non-combatant through your experience. And so there's genuine curiosity in what I'm asking you. If I am, I like this idea that the EP professional with one look can be an accountant with their boss, and with one look, they can suddenly change to be the person in charge and the security detail. And things like that I find rather interesting. Whereas you guys and girls out there, you probably just do it. But I think I have the permission to ask the more cheeky question, the more pressing question. We did an event on how would an executive protection officer protect an ultra high net worth multi-million-dollar NFT or cryptocurrency. Now, let's be honest, they're not asking you to protect it. But in my brain, the thought is, what would you do? So you ask about the circuit. Let's revisit that. Of course, John is our managing editor. We have Sean and Elijah and myself. And together we end up interviewing people predominantly from Europe or the US. But of course, we've just been going 4 months. We're not as long-standing in such as Conversations in Close Protection or Spencer's podcast. We haven't been going that long, so we do have an appetite to interview everybody. But where do we complement you, or at least where do we not overlap? I'd like to say that we do things thematically. So I mean, yes, maybe we would do an expose on the life of Chris Story, but it's not
Which
quite
would be awesome.
Well, you did that for me. You did that for me.
He was born at an early age.
I'm just kidding.
Who would play him? Keanu Reeves.
Yes.
Absolutely, Keanu would do it. And so, but I would like to say that we're bringing the pages of our Circuit magazine to life, and therefore we're thematic. And we're not, if you look at Protection Nation, of course, we're going to be speaking with Byron and Icon, and we're going to speak with Elijah about NABA. But I think we add something that is thematic. That's what I think would separate us from everything. What do you think, John? Is that what we're trying to do?
Yeah, I would say that's where we're going. I think that's largely been because of your vision on that. I think I would have just started rounding up people and asking them a whole bunch of questions, as it came to mind. And it's good to have that direction. I mean, Pelham, when Pelham came on board, he brought a great wealth of experience in a very particular area that we didn't have prior to that. And since Pelham's come on board, we've gone all guns blazing with podcasts, events, training, workshops, clinics, and that's all largely been down to Pelham's experience and his total enthusiasm for the subject. Not to mention his connections as well in his little black book.
You guys have done a great job, though, of pivoting during, the pandemic. We've talked about this on our pod. You guys have talked about it. Spencer's talked about it. Yeah. If people missed out on the opportunities over the last 12 months to learn, and they just sat in their room and said, "Oh, woe is me, pandemic, COVID," they missed a great opportunity to reset, retool, re-educate, and pivot forward. And I would say that Pelham's done a great job. You guys have done a great job in saying, look, it's not just an opportunity to monetize in the situation, but to say, what can we do to get content and kind of reset and get people on the same, on the same page moving forward. So I think that's been a tremendous asset to the industry, and kudos to the whatever energy drink you have, Pelham.
Whatever's in that teacup you have there.
I cut down. But no, I like it. And I think everyone's pivoted and everyone is naked. So imagine I want to learn more about Spencer. I can find out your story online. I can see the book that you've written. I can see your biography. And you know what? If you hadn't built that up before COVID, I don't think that this would all be possible.
Yeah.
What do you think, Spencer? What has it been like for you?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm a firm believer in the every day is school day mentality, where if you are not looking to what you want your future to be, then you have no way to reverse engineer it to identify where those pivot points are going to land you. I had, of course I would have loved to have, started doing a podcast, years ago, just didn't have the time to do it. The pandemic, in basically ceasing all of my travel, allowed for me to devote a certain amount of my calendar to putting this plan into place. And it just so happened that I have a book coming out. It's called The Safety Trap, comes out May 18th, The Security Expert Secrets for Staying Safe in a Dangerous World. Please forgive the shameless plug. It's right here. It's
Dude,
available.
You're so good at that. You're so good at that.
Available in 12 days.
What happens here? It's a pile of The Safety Trap.
Yes, yes.
But one of the reasons I wanted to do the podcast was so that I could, like you guys, start talking to other subject matter experts in the field. It just so happened that it had the added bonus of, with the book promotion, getting my audience to get more familiar with hearing my voice rather than just my words, so that as they are reading the book, they hear my voice in their head rather than whatever voice was curated in their consciousness. Now, what has been great with all of that is that I've been able to take things. So basically, what the way the Safety Trap is structured is, something bad happens, I talk about how it's allowed to happen, and then I provide 5 protective strategies to help keep that bad thing from happening to you. And the way I structure the podcast is in a very similar manner. And John, like you were saying, my very first episode was god awful. I talked about the Vanessa Guillen tragedy at Fort Hood, and there's this like dramatic music, and I'm very thematic about it, and like you think I'm doing like an up the down staircase PBS, rendition. I listen to that now, and it's cringeworthy.
Well, I would say that. I would say, wow. I was like, okay, Spencer. Okay, what do you got going on here?
Yeah.
All right. Is this gonna continue?
I'm down with the PBS stuff. I mean, most of the people are like, "What are you talking about?" It's like Downton Abbey, only different, folks.
Right. So what I do now is I take something that happened in the news, explain how it's allowed to happen, what happened, how it's allowed to happen, and here's some things that can happen to you, and whether that be an active shooter situation or school security, or what the security situation at your local supermarket looks like, or even last week I had Andrew Murphy on the podcast to talk about home security. And then on Monday, there was an attempted home invasion at my house. So today's podcast was all about, the 5 Ds of home security and how my dog basically saved that bad guy's life so that he didn't get he didn't paint my fence. If I had just
he wasn't welcomed. He wasn't welcomed
at 1:10 a.m. when my dog goes from 0 to hero very quickly. You know that something's real.
But Spencer, you do a really good job though of like pointing out some like what everyone on this call would think would be obvious, but maybe to the general public it's just kind of anonymous or in the background. Like with when you were talking about the shopping and like bringing up these cameras. Hey, there's cameras everywhere. I'm safe. Well, wait a minute.
Yeah, the invisible obvious is, the reason the book is called The Safety Trap is because the safety trap is the false sense of security that inhabits our inner person when our fears have been abated, but risk remains. And so giving that shopping center experience, it's like most people, my mother, my sister, my friends, some of my colleagues, they walk in and they see this premises is under 24-hour surveillance, and they look up and they see the camera and they see the guard and they see all the domes, and they're like, oh, this place is really secure. So I'm going to lower my level of vigilance because this place has me protected. The reality is that all of those security systems are there to protect the products. To the extent that they can protect you as a byproduct. And I basically say, listen, the Ring camera that you have on your front door, is that there to protect the mailman, or is it there to protect you? It's there to protect you. So think of those security cameras in much the same way. And just, people have that like, oh, that makes perfect sense. And it's like, oh, okay. Yeah. So everything I do with the podcast, with the book, with my blogs is just to help everyone to live their very best life the safest way possible by just identifying those realistic risks so you can put the best practices into place so you can keep that risk from ever becoming a reality.
So Spencer, you mentioned that, comparing back to your first episode to where you are now, that things have changed, things have improved. Was that an organic process, or, did you, have you overlaid some form of structure into the podcast that you now follow each week?
Yes. So I try to make the intro the same. I try to make the outro the same. So when I do my intro, I try to make it, hey, this is who I like at the very beginning. Like when a James Bond movie where there's that cool mission that he does at the very beginning, which establishes his skill set, and then it goes into the story, and then it goes to the credits after that. I try to structure the podcast in a very same way. So here's who I am. Here's why I'm qualified to talk about this. Here's what happened. Here's how it was allowed to happen. Here's how you can keep it from happening to you. And then I'll say, hey, thanks for everything. If you want to see some other stuff, check this out. And don't forget to order the book. Mm-hmm. But in terms of like production value or stagecraft or lighting or set design, I did my very first podcast sitting on my couch with GarageBand on my iPhone and the Apple microphone thing coming to, and it was okay, but it wasn't great. But then you start having guests on, you start seeing how other people are doing it. You start doing your own research. You're like, oh, okay, if I get a ring light, if I, establish, some dimensions for the camera, if I invest in a good microphone, if I have some nice headphones. So every little bit happens. And if, like I said at the very beginning, every day is school day. If you are not doing what you can do to improve your life, your career, your family, your function, you have to have that work, sweat, win mindset so that every day you're working, every day you're putting in the effort, and at the end of the day you can reap the rewards of those seeds that you sowed because you put in the time, effort, and energy that was required to be successlike
we need a training day quote right now.
Maybe. I don't know, but I think a couple things like what John, you and Fallon were talking about, and Spencer, when we talk about when we relay something that's happened to somebody and we kind of already know the answer, right? And I was thinking about this morning. I was listening to Jack Carr's book, The Devil's Hand, and he describes a functions
great book,
right, and describes a functions check on a AK. And we would go, oh yeah, it's a functions check, boom, done, right? But most people don't know what that is or what that entails, and so it is important to walk through those steps. And of course, we're falling asleep because okay, got it, it's a functions check. But that's part of I think that's part of the process that sometimes we miss, because our audience is usually senior practitioners or folks who want to be senior practitioners, and that's who we really talk to. So we don't really go into those basics. But as you guys were talking about, sometimes you really have to break it down to say, hey, here's really what we mean. And I think in Spencer, your case, as you talk to, you really don't talk to, you talk to some professionals, because I know there are things that as I read the book, there are things that I've forgotten about that we just kind of take for granted. As you break it down, we walk through those steps. But it is important at times to kind of break those things down so people understand it. And I think that becomes pretty important, based on your audience. So I have a great appreciation of how you do that. And it really comes to mind is that your audience is you really practitioners and then their families, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You make it really shareable,
I think that's an interesting conversation that maybe we could pivot into is, how do we know how did you guys learn who your audience was? And then how are you starting to craft and tailor your message to that audience? Because when I first started Coursen Security Group, I was still a protector. I was looking for those who needed an executive protection team, or who needed, an escort, or who needed, someone to be with them as they were doing public events, or were on a movie set, or were touring, or what have you. But as the more of the threat management consultation side of the house began to grow, I realized that it's number one to the everyday citizen so that they can have the protective strategies to help them succeed in staying safe. But my podcast, my newsletter, the blogs that I write, they're really more towards CEOs, private family offices, high net worth families. I'm not really interested in my podcast. While it may have some very good content for the everyday practitioner, I'm providing that content so that those practitioners can better explain it to their clients, and hoping that their clients can better understand what their protectors are trying to convey to them. And then when those clients need to have their protective details audited or assessed or managed in some way, then they can call me for that support. But I'm very curious how you guys also, what was your journey in that process of what your intentions were, what you realized you were providing, and then how you were ultimately able to capitalize on those insights?
Well, I'll go first. So I think for us, I know for myself, I was kind of tired of all the basic entry level discussions, over and over by different people from different perspectives. And I kind of felt like we could have a higher level conversation because there's the market for entry level people is massive, right? But as you move up, it's more of a pyramid and there's a glass ceiling. Like there are no executive vice presidents of executive protection unless you're a provider, right? So how do we get people to the next level? How do we talk to those folks who want to be, a shift lead, a manager, a director? And then beyond that, just like you said, if somebody else happens to be listening to this, an executive, somebody who's looking at close protection, what do they hear us talking about? Right? Are we talking about standing post? Are we talking about, what do I need to do on an advance? What does that look like? Or would they go, hey, there's way more to this than I see when I Google executive protection and click images and I see somebody there with an earpiece and sunglasses. And so from my perspective, for Conversations in Close Protection, that's what we're trying to talk to. We're trying to bring that higher level conversation instead of, that's what we talk about John Wick all the time, is it's not guns and gear or beards, biceps and ball caps. It's, how it's
writing that down
from the neck up, right? Like, how do we approach it from the neck up at a higher level?
Yeah, add to that too. The other thing that I think is important is legacy. We have a great industry. We have a lot of people that are wanting to talk about everyday carry or knives or this, and that's all, that's all fair and fine, as the big Dane might say. But at the end of the day, I think Chris and I also connected at the conference in talking about how do we capture the legacy stories from people in the industry. We really don't have a repository of history. We have people working hard every day. And I think something that I'm passionate about in the industry is to say, how do we capture these stories so that they can live, so people can learn, and we can start creating a history. So we're not always going back to the same old. Now we have, and I think, John and Pelham, you're doing it. Spencer, you're doing, Eli is doing it. Byron's doing, all these folks doing it that are capturing stories that I hope at some point we can gather and say, look, this is how we've gotten where we are. This is where we were. This is how we are. And here's our steps. And from that, we can be informed. We can learn. We can help others understand that, we're not the, guns, gates, and guards. We're guns, gates, guards, gigabytes. We're thinkers. We're risk mitigators, all those things. So I know that's personally for me, when Chris and I talked about starting the podcast, gosh, I don't know, 5 years ago, Chris, 4 years ago.
Yeah. Chuck. And when you talk about capturing legacy, I think that's really something that, if there's one silver lining to COVID, especially as it relates to what all of us are doing, it used to be that if you wanted to do someone's podcast or if you wanted to have their interview, it was like, hey, if you're ever in Austin, would love to have you over for an interview, or if you're ever in LA, or if you're ever in London, or if you're ever in Seattle, or wherever the case may be. But COVID kind of normalized this kind of exchange. And this kind of exchange opened up the potential for these insightful and relatable and down-to-earth conversations that so many of our audience find insightful. You're talking about, yeah, it's great that you can have someone who can come in and, give you the garnish of their everyday carry or the car they drive or, how tight their grouping is, but you're really coming for the entree, and that's the legacy, that's their story, that's their mission, that's their purpose, that's their function. And
I also think something John said earlier, Chris and I have talked about in our podcast. We've had talks with folks offline of like, the second Iraq war, and then the U.S. going over. This is not anyone's political statement either way, but saying, look, we're going to nation build, do whatever. It really took the private security, the PMC or the PSD, however you want to gauge that slice or segment, and escalated that at scale. I mean, people on this call were all, employed because of it. And then and myself, it's interesting to me to understand that legacy. Like John, you were talking about, all the private military contractors. And now that we're, how many years past that war fighting activity, now we're seeing different things happening in the environment. And I'm very curious always to look at, how is the industry evolving and moving? So
yeah, I would say
that.
From my perspective to add, that's, that when Chuck and I connected, it was about, Chuck was about legacy, and I was like, cool, let's have bigger conversations. And I was kind of like, okay, we'll figure out the legacy piece afterwards. But from a learning perspective for me, we are in a very judgy ass industry, right? Like if you do something right, I would have done it better. If you do something wrong, then I would have done it better too. And it's about me. It's not about the execution. It's not about the person who did it, not about the variables that we don't have any idea about what affected them. It's just about really a lot of judgment. And you don't really hear anything unless somebody saved the world, which you really never hear about. We really hear a lot about mistakes. And so for me, it's interviewing all these people all over the world who are doing fantastic work, and they're not heard of, right? So, we talk about Patrick Kane, what he's doing in his segment of the industry, and how his being a security director, literally every asset he has is in the air all the time, right? I mean, we don't look at those things because we have no idea. So the podcast exposes us and the great work people all over the world do. And I think from a legacy perspective, that really sheds I would say a really positive light on the industry. And that's what I'm really, I learned that was out there. And I think that makes me really proud about what we do, and not us. It's just really about what we do as an industry and those folks that we happen to have the honor of interviewing.
Yeah, Chris, you guys, you do a really great job with that. And I would say that's definitely inspired us. And our podcast evolved from a different background. There's a different set of motivations that prompted us into doing this. And, as Pelham says, we try to bring the pages of the Circuit magazine to life. And having already had the magazine behind us, it really informed. So kind of going back to, I think it was your question, Spencer, in terms of the content, and the audience and the content. So for us, it was kind of already predetermined by at least two factors. The biggest one by far was the fact that we'd had a magazine running for close to 13 years. And then behind that, a community. But also, in terms of the podcast world, we were a little late in joining that. And so, of course, we already had, there was already these great podcasts out here, most of which I'm sat with in this great conversation. And that gave us, that's being nailed there. And these guys are doing it like this, and this is awesome. And, and it's something that we consume and enjoy. So we don't just want to copy that. And so where's the gap? Where can we slot in? Where can we differentiate and distinguish ourselves? And so the most obvious thing to do was just make our podcast an extension of the magazine, and try to continue with the types of content that we put in the magazine. And so a lot of the center of focus is naturally the protector on the job, what the protector does day to day, but this is all the stuff we know about. So we look to the left and the right as well, and the peripheries, and where are the gaps in our knowledge, where, because we're so hyper focused on the client, the principal, our own skill set as a protector, there's got to be gaps. It might be your financial planning. It might be, your family's well-being. It might be your own mental well-being. And these are the kind of gaps, that we try to plug with the conversations that we're having. So that's definitely been our direction. And Chris, just to pick up on what you were saying, about the judgment in the industry. And this is something, that we're very aware of on our side. And we really try to strip the ego away. That's, one of the things that we really focus on is trying to make it accessible to anyone. Mm-hmm. We don't want it to be an elitist podcast. We want anybody to be able to jump on there. And one of the ways in which we do that is we kind of force our episodes to be really quite short. And Pelham is, great timekeeper on this. I mean, he's literally there with the egg timer. And I'm like, come on, let's keep going, And he's like, let's shut this down, And I really appreciate that, because for me, if I end an episode and I've still got, I wanted to know this and I wanted to know that, well, that's great, because that gives us something else to talk about in the future, and it means we haven't overdone. It means we haven't beaten it to death, and it's still fresh.
Isn't it funny how much timing plays a factor? It seems like it either has to be, 20 to 30 minutes, or it has to be an hour plus. Like, no one wants like a 42-minute podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or do they?
They want to, right? They want to, right? I don't know. They want a 42-minute episode of like, the Winter Soldier, but it's either like the Daily, which is like a tight 30, or a Joe Rogan Experiences, which is like let's just have a conversation 3 hours.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when you said 42 minutes, we do long form, and not really by design, but that's just kind of what works for us. And you said 42 minutes, I felt my body go like, and I watched Phelan go, so
right.
It's whatever works, I mean, it's whatever works for you.
Right. Because I say 42 minutes because that's like the old, like 1 hour TV show where it's like the A block commercial, B block commercial, C block. And then, it's miserable. No one wants 42 minutes.
But with all of this, don't you think that there's two main camps? The camp of the people that want to do This Is Your Life. That's a program in the UK. You probably have it in the States as well. A nice interview of someone leaving a legacy, that the sense of barbarians to the boardroom. Now you're official, and now there must be some sort of standard to set. But then there's also the depository of categorized information, and there'll always be a place for the former. But I find it quite interesting, especially imagine you've been in the services and you're used to very standardized achievements or standardized awards or pieces of paper, which everyone is sort of enamored by since school. We sort of respond to gold stars. We could create a gold star right here, right now. And I bet if I gave it to any one of you, you'd be like, oh, thanks. That's very nice.
Napoleon agrees with you.
Exactly. So what I find is quite interesting. Now, of course, there's lots of operators out there. And if you look on the LinkedIn profile, it's all gold stars. They've attended the course for this and this and this and this and this.
Yeah.
But for the operator on the job or for the corporate security professional on the job, I think that the YouTubeization or whatever of information, it's allowed us to slot our piece of advice in to a particular question, which I feel is a more effective way of learning. If a young 19-year-old says, I want to be a CP operator, they go through one of the main schools. There are so many schools. And by the way, if I mention any one of them, the other ones would get offended, wouldn't they? We're talking about people taking swipes at each other. They go through the school. And let's say I said, right, you've got to do this one course and it's all about mobile cyber security. Okay, when am I going to use that? In the future. And now you're going to do this course on running down the stairs and then tumbling and not hurting yourself.
I'll do that one.
Yeah, you'll do that one. Yeah. And then we'll do another course. We'll do another course on butler etiquette and how to wear a top hat. I don't know. I'm making these things up. And I'm sure loads of people.
That one is Spencer's.
You want the top hat, right? Here's the thing. If you do it at the very beginning of your career, it's not going to work for you, because it's better to do it at that point when you're 40 or 50 years old and you're like, I don't know how to wear a top hat. let's go on and find out. Simeon Rosette from the Rosette Butler School, who was on our podcast, he tells us the correct way is dumb. And that dichotomy between the this is your life expose and, barbarians to the boardroom, and then the standardization of information, I feel that that's the two camps we're all fitting into.
Mm-hmm. So
it's also adult learning. You've hit it on the head. I mean, you're talking about the way adults approach learning.
Yeah. I also think what you're outlining is very interesting because there are those two schools of camps. There are the profiles in success, the barbarians to the boardroom, and there are those, paint by the numbers. If you want to, become an executive, this is the way you have to do it. And you're right. When you look on LinkedIn or when you get a CV sent or it comes across your desk and you see, oh, I attended this course and this course and this course and this course. Great. That's stepping, not one person that we have interviewed or one person on this podcast or one person who we would want to see interviewed or whose bio we would want to read or whose legacy we would want to emulate did anything the way they were supposed to do it. All of them were rule breakers. All of them took risks. All of them saw an opportunity and pushed all the chips into the middle of the table. They had a chip, a chair, and a chance, and they took it. Following, and I think it's kind of like, not to like get, bring religion into this, but like the Bible is kind of like a good way to live a good life, but it's not the way you should live your life. And all of those courses in EP or business or what have you are a great way to kind of like, it's a good guide. It's kind of like when you're in the military and you get your operations order, that operations order is not going to survive the first gunshot, but you do know the commander's intent, and the commander's intent is to take this hill or get this bad guy or, blow up this bridge. And so I think some people look towards those, paint by the number type courses and go, okay, at least this will get me started. But the people who will be truly successful will take that path, but then have their own interpretation of it. And I think that, for every Chuck Randolph or John or Felm or Chris Story or Spencer Coursen, we're kind of like the sheepdogs. A lot of people are just comfortable being sheep. A lot of people are not comfortable being uncomfortable. And so while, there's that, come for the story, but stay for the lesson type thing, the story is the legacy. The lesson is that step by step. And I think the reason you see that dichotomy is because a lot of people want to have the dream, but they don't want to do the work to get it. But they're willing to be micromanaged in that perfunctory step by step process. But that is a race to middle management. And you will never be successful in following that model.
Yep.
Wow.
I think it kind of goes back to what Felm is talking about in, bits of paper or bits of metals and saying, I've just followed the course. Now I should be a level 2 CP. Now I should be a level 3 BG. Now I should be a level 4. And I think what we're finding and what everybody highlights in their own work is that that's simply not the way it is. I mean, there has to be a drive and passion and learning and innovation and three-dimensional thinking and all those things. So it's a good point, Spencer.
Well, I think what Pelham was saying too is what I was hearing or seeing is a little bit of the gap, right? Because you have the day in the life and how sexy it is and how awesome it is, and we all know that that's like maybe that much of the work, right? Which is basically what you're highlighting about yourself. That's awesome. It kind of lends me to believe, which is my other point. We were talking about creating a podcast. Spencer's talking about ring lights and all these green screens and all this other stuff, which as most protectors, even I know for me in 2008, when I created a LinkedIn profile, like I was probably having a panic attack because I had done everything behind the scenes. I really had no social media, nothing by design. And I put myself out there and I probably had to take a drink afterwards, right? Take a knee, drink water, because that was just so out of the norm. Right. Now we're doing video and YouTube, and like you talk about ring lights and green screens and all this stuff that a lot of influencers of Instagram use to promote themselves. But this is a little bit different because we're trying to promote the industry. So at least for myself, I could look past it. Right. But there's this gap between what's sexy, right? Guns, gear, guys, gals, right? Freaking G5s, I was trying to go as far as G as possible. All the sexy stuff that again is just an nth of whatever what we're really doing. And that's what attracts people, right? Like if you sold a close protection course that didn't have any of that, nobody would show up, right? Because not many people understand the profession enough to go, hey, here's really what is the bulk of the work, right? Here's the most risky things we'll ever do. And here's what I need to know, because the rest of it's sexy, right? But once you get through the sexy piece, then you have to learn how to, like Feldman was saying, you have to learn how to wear a top hat, or wear a, tie a, whatever kind of tie you need to wear, or learn how to do cybersecurity, or learn how to do something that's to that second, third, fourth level. And that's where I think the podcasts come in to provide direction. And then of course, all those things you can learn off of YouTube, for those protectors who kind of go, hey, I went to the course, it's awesome. And I'm working 2 or 3 years and I've never covered and evacuated anybody. I've never pulled out a long gun in the middle of the street, all the crazy stuff that you see, but I love this industry and I need to learn more and I want more out of it and I want to put more into it. And I think that's, at least for me, I think that's the gap that we all fill in one way, shape, or the other along the career path.
Well, listen, I want to say something here. And I did want, I wish Byron had been on the podcast because I would love to get his insight on this. And this is, I'm not in any way, shape, or form saying that this is his business model, but I did a litigation case. So my firm does a lot of litigation support. And about a year ago, I worked on a case where a uniformed guard at a mall wound up shooting someone, and he was justified in doing so. And it was an armed assault it was an attempted carjacking, and the guard's actions absolutely saved that individual's life. But opposing counsel went through that individual's social media account and presented photos of him with suits and guns and at the range and, playing like Captain Commando with all of this stuff, and basically presented his case as this guy wasn't a protector. This guy was looking for a fight. Mm-hmm. This guy was looking for an excuse to put all of that gear and all of that training into action. Mm-hmm. And yes, listen, I don't have a photo on my website of me sitting behind my desk, staring at a computer screen for 8 hours. I have a photo of me action doing something shot. Right. But but that's one small moment of a 10-day op that was mostly miserable, but there was one cool second where a photo was able to get captured and it makes it look like this is the life. But mm-hmm. that's not the life. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
But it's what people want. But it's what people want to portray.
Right.
We're touching on something that I think is really interesting here, and already we've got two kind of different perspectives, and it's kind of the background that goes to producing something that's going to be out there, where you're looking for an audience, you're looking to attract people, because of course, we're doing all this, we're creating value. That's always our aim. We want people to benefit from that naturally, because this is a time investment. We're all pouring our time into this, but also we want to be informed. We want to get the feedback, and the wider, that net is, the more feedback we can get, the better that can steer us in the decisions that we make for our audience. Mm-hmm. And so, and it's interesting because we got two British guys on here as well. And I have a feeling, I have a sense that the kind of self-promotion, the backstory, the ring lights, the cameras, the audio, and all of this comes a lot more naturally and a lot easier to you guys, but also it's better received across the pond in the States. And so there's a few things here, and I'm wondering what your own perspectives are on this. And so one of them is, kind of Chris touched on this a bit, and that's, you're doing all this to promote the show, promote the value that you're putting out there, but you kind of need to keep yourself in check a bit, right? You need to make sure that this stays about the show and not about me. But people are interested in me and I am part of the show. So how do you measure that? So that's one thing, right? And then of course, you have well, how is it perceived by the audience? And also, if I'm putting myself out there, I'm used to being in the shadows. I'm used to taking a step back and by design being the gray man. And now I'm throwing myself out there. So what are the consequences of that? And given that you guys all have been doing this longer than we have, I'm just wondering what your experience is in this area. Horror stories, good things, bad things, whatever you got, throw them out there.
Well, I think first it was interesting because as we're talking about the sexy pieces, right? The guns and the kitschy photos and all that stuff. I'm looking at you guys going, oh yeah, you guys kind of don't really deal with that so much, with the exception of the folks that are doing PSD, because that's not essentially the culture of the environment. I think for us, we really haven't really talked about ourselves that much. The only thing that we do that I think that we do that gives insight into our thought process is when we do our TAC talks, where it'll just be Chuck and I. For the most part, that's us giving our thought process and opinion, and then of course we'll talk about how or what the interaction with our guest was, and then we'll talk about the subjects, and that kind of gives insight into our thoughts and our thought processes. But I would say for us, we really haven't talked about each other so much. We did one interview that was Chuck interviewing Chris and Chris interviewing Chuck about backgrounds. I think the only people that listened to that were like our moms. For the rest of it was
number one fan.
I gave it a good 10 minutes.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. But
I was listener number 3.
Really, it comes out. I think for us, it really comes down to the listeners, right? I mean, I'm sorry, to the guests, and the guests really, being able to tell their stories, and the listeners tend to enjoy that a little bit more. That's my perspective.
You might not even realize this, but you are growing. I mean, obviously you're the consistent part of the show. So the guest comes on one week, you're on every week, and you become associated with the show, and it's spanning the whole of the English speaking globe that has an interest in this area. So like it or not, your profile does grow, and you are out there as much, and like you say, as much as you try to rein that in.
Mm-hmm. But I think the thing is, all of us, whether you're monetizing or you're just putting information out, we approach it like we're trying to get information out. And I think that's everybody that's here, or the people that will be represented. I think that's something that differentiates all of us from a lot of others. Like yes, of course, Spencer's got a book, and you guys have got the magazine or conferences. Chris and I have, impending book on the horizon and things. But at the end of the day, we're not doing it because of that. We're doing it because we have a passion to do it. We have a passion to inform practitioners, or to inform, as Spencer might say, as I look up in my left-hand corner of the screen, to inform those people receiving it, or as Chris and I, to elevate a conversation. I think that's maybe something that comes across when I listen to all of our stuff, is like, it's really putting something above us and above putting us out there. And I actually I'm with Chris. I mean, I always consider more like, God, we got this, we had Go Noisy on there, and that was super interesting what we had, or when we had Dean on there talking about his experiences. And I think to myself, man, it's amazing that we have these folks on and listening to their tales and their stories. So,
yeah, and it's interesting that the two guys that couldn't join us were the two that really balance a really good job of self-promotion and industry promotion. That's not it doesn't seem to be self-serving, right? It's like it's an excellent balance, and I started recognizing that about Elijah probably like 2012. Like, he did a really good job of like promoting himself and doing all the things and being a ambassador in the celebrity industry, celebrity protective space, without whoring himself out, to be honest with you, right? I mean, I've been at events where a guy's like, cool, here's my business card, and it literally has a photo with every person they've ever protected. There's the guy, right? Completely uncool, but a great balance of that. And I think Byron, who will be joining us separately, he does a great job of making it look cool, okay, and kitschy and awesome, but then he swings over and kind of gives you a different perspective of it, which really isn't about him. So if you take Byron at face value, you're like, oh, that guy, blah, blah, blah. Then you realize, and you talk to him, and like, we had a great interview with him, and he's a great colleague. He's like really, really genuine and really down to earth. And so you get to understand those two different personalities, or two different promotions, not unlike a lot of different entities, like you get to see who, Charlize Theron is, but you also, if you get to talk to her, you've got the public persona, and then you've got the private persona, and often they're pretty close and intertwined. And I think we're pretty lucky in this space that a lot of the folks that we talk to are very genuine, just exactly as you see them. But because we're judgy, we go, oh, there's that guy with the photo of a suit and a AK or a AT4 or whatever, and we make the judgment, right? So I think that everybody has a really good balance of it, depending on what they're doing. And yes, John, one time I was at the range, and some guy's like, I'm like, hey, my name's Chris, whatever. He's like, you look really familiar. My go-to is like, hey, you ever been to prison? Which is usually a great icebreaker. And he's like, no, you're on that podcast. I was like, oh yeah. And he, that was kind of cool, but we really kind of try to focus on the guests.
Yeah. And I guess my only input on this would be that there's a difference between using social media to promote your personal opinion and using social media to promote your professional brand. I know that social media, at least in my work, is both legitimacy and transparency. People want to see, are you the kind of person that's going to be, listen, like when I was on the protection side of the house and we got a profile of whoever our driver was going to be, and if I looked at his social media and it was him with his family and, at the gym or doing yard work or at sports games or, what have you, great. I want this guy driving us. If I pull up someone's profile and it's, selfies in the back seats with every celebrity he's ever driven, this guy's probably going to be sharing, my client's stories as well. So that's something to take into consideration.
Spencer, at the last, close protection conference that everybody should attend, especially since we didn't have anything last year, but, we always have a business of EP panel. And I'm trying to remember, we had one at the last actual physical one. And we had a former prosecutor was talking about what happens if you have an incident, say it's a shooting or something around, or say maybe you're a protector for the folks over the water, hand to hand or something. And we had a former prosecutor as part of the panel. And I remember her talking about social media and said something, when I listen to everyone here, and I know if I go on all your social media accounts, all I can see is additional charges that I'm going to throw at everybody.
Yep, that's exactly what.
And there was like everyone in the audience was like, what? And I may be misquoting.
That's exactly what that lawyer did in that case. And so I think it's and again, this is why I wanted to have Byron on the podcast. But I also think that when we're talking about like the audience thing, is that I think Byron, who is a brilliant social media manager, like if he ever like broke his leg and couldn't do protection work for a while, he should go work for some like Fortune 100 company doing their, reputation management, because he's brilliant at the social media component of the business. But I also think he's mostly targeting people that his audience is people that he wants to attend his schools and seminars, not the CEOs of corporations or people in need of like threat management work. So he knows the draw. He knows that those people playing Call of Duty, where he's on the cover of the poster for it, you know what I mean, is going to get people to be like, oh, if I can be like him, then no one will take advantage of me. And so if I follow Byron, if I do this training, if I learn these skills, I can help keep myself and maybe others safe. But the flip side to that is that if he was on a protective detail and he did get into an armed engagement, you're exactly right. That prosecutor is going to have all the evidence in the world to throw at him. And I'm just curious where that the like when you see The Rock and he's like promoting a movie, and so he's, all gunned up, but then you see The Rock at home and it's him making pancakes with his kid. He's doing that deliberately so that there's a clear delineation between the professional actor and the husband at home. And when those two aspects start to bleed into each other, it makes it very difficult to untangle them when you need to have a story that is believable and concise and true when you are in a court of law and your ass is on the line.
Yeah, risk.
It sounds like the quiet security professional question, isn't it? It's and what on earth that quietness is? Is it quietness because you're not saying anything? Or is it quietness because you've carefully orchestrated your image? I did a nice one with Lee Orton, Tim Wenzel, and then Chuck Andrews also came on, the friends of Chuck. And we were pondering this question because some young professionals have been slapped down by their employers. They literally posted some things with a black background or a green background, and they said, "Oh, you can't do that. You're making a fool of yourself." And what they were trying to do is create a personal brand like Byron or like Spencer. But they were slapped down because they were in somebody's employ, and that's another story, what that kind of means. But I'd be interested in exploring the quiet security professional. Does that mean stumm? Or does that mean more discreet? And then what about those young professionals who are just trying to get into the game? They don't have a backstory. Their backstory is, I'm fresh. How can we balance it?
I think maybe something to add to that is with discreet is also thoughtful. When social media first started, and probably everyone on this call remembers like AOL and how we got to Facebook and Instagram and Clubhouse and all that. And at first it was like, hey, everybody needed to post something because it was important that people knew. And I think over what we've seen in the quiet professional space and the folks that like I follow, and I will call them true influencers, there is that kind of balance, The Rock being the hardest working person in the room and showing that I'm at work, I'm at play, I'm at rest. And I think a lot of that goes back to thoughtful. And you can see those folks, if you look, they're thoughtful posts. And I think that's maybe another piece to add to that, Pelham.
Well, it's interesting. Really, it's about balance, right? And your approach to risk. How much risk am I willing to absorb in this to create my brand? What does that look like? And what risk vectors will affect me? Based on what I post. I would say some of us have are out there, and we've got some really cool stuff out there, but there's a lot of risk attached to it. I'd say probably one of the guys that had the most influence on the executive protection space in the last couple of years, Aaron Malden, really posted his forehead and his shoes and his suitcase, right? I mean, wherever it was, you saw that, I like to call it the famous forehead, and maybe there were some eyes in there, and then a pair of Chuck T's, and a suitcase, and really helped promote a lot of the industry within that. And yeah, he was able to, he salted in some rain stuff and some having fun and doing some different things, but he was very, very, I think it was different because some of us, our brand is us as individuals, where he was promoting his brand, but he also promoted his company's brand, and he kind of kept those a little bit separate, right? And there was enough balance in there, I think, that you're able to see what this person did. They traveled a lot for work. They were able to do, you saw, as you look at that overall picture, what does that picture say? Is it picture say that you're trying to be John Wick? Does it picture say that you're a professional, you travel, you've got a family, it's balanced? And I think so really what it comes down to is like risk and balance, because social media is new for us and new for us as an industry. How do I promote myself and my talents and my brand, right? To be with where I am in the industry, it's kind of hard to, like Spencer was talking about, the keyboard isn't sexy. Here's me doing threat assessments.
Here's the other thing. Cool. And I agree that Aaron is great at that. But the difference is that Aaron can afford to do that because he's got a guaranteed paycheck coming in every 2 weeks. If Aaron,
there's that,
if you know what I mean. So he doesn't have to promote. He's not the business. He's a functionary. He's a guy working for a guy who has been hired to protect someone. Mm-hmm. If Aaron had his own business and was promoting his own brand, I guarantee he'd be much like some of the best protectors I know who have like one single family, ultra wealthy client and have a business that, you know, is kind of a loan out for them to do that, that function, have very little social media presence. I mean, Clint Emerson, prior to having his book come out, was a ghost, like a literal ghost. Couldn't find him anywhere. And in fact, the only like backstory you ever find out about Clint Emerson, and I know you guys have him, does that podcast come out today, Chuck?
Today.
Yeah, today.
Cannot wait to hear that. That's going to be my my soundtrack during my workout today. But try to find something on Clint Emerson before he had to make that pivot to self-promotion. Mm-hmm. And one of the first things that he said to me when I was talking to him about, you know, writing my own book, he was like, "Hey man, you're going to have to get out of your comfort zone. You're going to have to promote yourself because no one's going to be a better ambassador of your brand than you." Yep. He's like, and it's,
let me ask you guys a question, because I know this is a lot of new folks or folks that have been around. They're waiting like, somebody right now, help me. So what if we kind of went around the horn? What would your 2 or 3 suggestions be for somebody who's out there and having to balance? It's like, I need to be a quiet professional, the gray man, but if I don't have a social media presence, that's almost the opposite now, where people are like, you're not on Facebook or LinkedIn. What's wrong with you? What would suggestions be from this wizened cast of characters? You know,
I'll give you 3 right now.
Yep.
Are you trying to promote yourself or are you trying to promote a brand? Number 2, are you trying to monetize your content or are you trying to sell something through your content? I have a business. I am promoting me. I am trying to sell a book. Everything I do is surrounding or in support of those endeavors. And number 3, how much risk am I assuming in this effort? Take a real audit yourself with honesty about the real world risk you are assuming by promoting that agenda, and then move forward from there. So personal or professional, monetization or not, risk.
Now, how, you know, John and Pelham, you know, being our representatives over the water of the Minder set, what advice would you give to some young practitioners saying, how do I balance my brand in, you know, being out there with not being so out there?
Yeah. So it's a really good question for somebody on our side of the pond, because I think maybe the tables are a little different. And certainly starting out myself, it was a case of I don't really know what social media is. I mean, I can see it. I can see how it's being used, but it's so new. The internet is so new. It's going to develop. It's going to change. How is it going to be viewed when we look back at that? You know, and do I know where I'm going to be working in 5 years, in 10 years, what the industry is going to look like, what that client is, the organization, what their preferences are going to be? And if I can't answer all of those questions, which I couldn't, so for me, and my advice would be to play the safe game in this industry and to have a very measured social media presence, but not to be completely invisible, because I think that is eyebrow raising in and of itself. So yeah. My advice would be to have a presence, but for it to be very measured, very controlled. Every time you post, think of it read by or from the perspective of every potential employer, family, high net worth that you might want to work for in the future. And if you're uncertain about anything, then don't hit enter.
It's interesting. John, you just made me think, like, if you have a mentor or someone who's giving you feedback, you know, going back to what you said, Spencer, about how willing are you to put yourself out there, saying like, hey, Pelham, if you're mentoring me, or could you give me an honest feedback about my social media? I mean, that's interesting and good points, John.
If I am 70 years old, then my perspective is going to be both great and rubbish. Great in that I can give you a wealth of experience as to how I will view you, and I might view you as a young upstart. How dare you consider to have such a presence, you need 70 years on your CV before you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But then, of course, I'm rubbish because I don't realize the naked, unpolished content wave that's coming through. Everyone is still busy talking about millennials. I'm sorry, millennials are yesterday's news. It's the Gen Z that are really shaping what everything's going to be like. It's going to be a lot of unpolished content. But that doesn't mean you can go wild, and you need, as John said, to consider what someone's going to think. So my small thought on this is there's a lot of stuff you can do that is not you, but yet is promotion of you. You look at my Instagram, my personal one, it's pictures of scenery, not where I live. It's pictures of a nice flower or a cool car or whatever I've done with Photoshop. Now,
you can send me the link to that later, Balam.
Yeah, it's a friendly.
And now your moment of zen.
Exactly, it's that type of thing. Or if you look at my CTG account, it's pictures of a panel, or it's a picture of an event. There's a lot you can do. You could even create an avatar. You could create some cartoon character of yourself. There's a lot you can do before you have to go out and bare your soul, which may or may not look good later. Let's say you bared your soul and you say, I have a very strong political opinion. Cool. That might be popular today, but in 20 years, what if everything has changed? That's a tattoo. So anyway, that's my ramble, but I think there's a lot of cool stuff you can do that is not definitely you.
Yeah. I think John made a really good point. Sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you were saying that I have a chapter in my book which is all about oversharing and the amount of, people don't realize how much personal information they share online in a 6-month span. But to your point about that you wouldn't want something that you posted, like, read to your mother. I have a quote in my book where, like, don't put anything online, don't say anything online, don't post anything to Instagram or Facebook that you wouldn't be comfortable being on the front page of the New York Times the next morning. Because if someone finds a grievance with what you said and that does go viral, I mean, I'm thinking of the woman's name escapes me who made that, off-color tweet about,
in New York?
She was, I think she worked for an ad agency, but she was going to South Africa. She's like, going to South Africa, hope I don't get AIDS. Haha, just kidding, I'm white. And had 87 followers on Twitter, but by the time she landed in South Africa, had 1 million followers and had death threats and had to have an armed escort, get her back to New York, where New York was then weird. And I mean, her world went to hell in a handbag just from 120 characters. Yeah. But
well,
you're
exactly that. But
that's what I'm saying about the 100%.
Yeah.
So that's the risk assessment part.
So I would say, and I guess first off, Spencer, I would say that when we first talked, I was like, man, this guy gets it, because I know that one of my sticking points is being comfortable to promote myself, right? I mean, I go with Phelim's deal is like, I'll just post stuff and you'll get a feel for me, but you won't get all of me. And I have a great appreciation for your approach to business, where you're like, hey, look, dude, it's about the business. I pivoted. I'm going to promote these things, and I assume all the risk in that, but I'm not going to do anything that puts me on the New York Times, and I had a great appreciation for that. From my perspective, you can do it safely by promoting in professional places. I would say LinkedIn is a great place to push articles, to push thought processes, as long as you don't get political. And I would say the next piece is Clubhouse, where Clubhouse, from my perspective, is if you're not in the audience, but you come up on stage and you give an opinion, that's a great way to promote yourself in terms of, let's say I've got a room of 50 people, but I raise my hand and I come up on stage, and I may not know. Maybe I just ramble. Maybe I give an opinion. Maybe it's close enough, or maybe I don't have any experience. I'm saying, hey, I don't have any experience in this. I'm just glad to be here, and I just want to say thank you. Well, if you do that a couple times, people are going to know you. Those 50 people are going to know who you are over the person who sits in the room and doesn't say anything, right? And so if I go, hey, who's Chris Story? And you're like, oh, Chris Story, yeah, that's the guy that's in the Clubhouse, and he always says something. And I remember he started out, this was his background, but he's evolving over time. And I've heard him 4 or 5 times. He might be a good guy to talk to. it's a real-time interview where people can understand who you are and where you come from, or at least your thought processes. There's a lot of risk in that, right? If you do it live, but if you have a thoughtful approach to it, that's a good place to either ask questions, and seem, inquisitive, professional, et cetera. And I would say, that's a great way to do it. And it doesn't last forever, right? And you can correct mistakes. And it's a great place, for you to test some things out versus, posting it forever.
That clubhouse room is fantastic. And I think you're exactly, I mean, how many great, thought leaders have come up on that stage, or, it was great to see like Camille go from the audience to the followed by, the people on stage to being on stage herself. But then on the flip side, you're going to have, I'm not going to say his name, but, Mr. You need to know how to negotiate. I was like, you're talking to a room full of negotiators. We know this.
Positive and negative.
Hasn't been back since. But
something else for folks to think about when they're posting is, this is a crazy idea, but a little bit of gratitude goes a long way. I think something that Chris said, like, hey, just stand up and say, I just appreciate what you're doing. And Pelham, I know it's something that you're involved in, but this idea of like, it's somebody said it earlier. A couple people said it. There's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacks or Monday morning footballers for you folks over there. And it's okay though, to come on and say, hey, I appreciate everything you all are doing. I think we're seeing more of that in the industry, which I think is good. And I think these ideas of mindfulness and all that, are also coming to light. You see it over in the special operations community. It's bleeding its way over into the protective operations community. And I think that's a good thing too. Being thoughtful, understanding what you're putting out there, and not everything has to be shit talking someone else. Sometimes it can be like, we've said before, raising the tide or whatnot. Yeah.
Well, Chuck,
what's next?
Chuck, just 1 second before we jump into the what's next. I just wanted to say that I think that you and Chris, with your podcast and your respective social media platforms, have been huge in championing the thought leadership of others, and in giving other practitioners a voice and other practitioners an opportunity to speak or to provide insight or to do what they can. But one of the things that I really love about what is happening in this industry is kind of like, what's happening today is kind of what happened in the comedy world a couple of years ago, where the Rogans and people like that started pooling everyone's talents to, to Chris's favorite quote, using that rising tide to help raise all ships. Sorry, I just wanted to throw that out there and just say thank you for not only helping to promote my voice, but for promoting everyone on this podcast as well.
Much appreciated. Much appreciated. And everybody's doing their job, and it's we're all doing yeoman's work to usher it forward. So
thanks for keeping the nautical theme, Chuck. Appreciate it. We're good like that, right? We get able to do that. Yeah.
Can't wait to come up with the adjective for this one.
Like Phelim said earlier, it's all about just keeping a good constant theme. That's really what you're trying to accomplish here.
We get a lot of feedback on the podcast. I'm sure, you guys get it in the circuit. You get it on Coursen's Corner. One thing we get all the time is like about the adjective of the week. Like, what are you going to use to describe the, across the digital divide with Chris? So this will be an interesting one to come up with for sure.
I don't know what to say.
So what's next for folks?
Listen, coming up next for me, the Safety Trap is available for pre-order everywhere.
Didn't see that coming at all.
Your favorite books are sold. It is available in hardcover, ebook, and audiobook, and it will be available everywhere this May 18th. So get your copy.
Nicely done, my friend.
Also, I want to throw this over to Phelim because the irony in a guy who puts on a 3-day event wanting short podcasts, it's palpable, but understandably, because he runs 3-day events and he can only afford to have short podcasts. So I think that's the driver, John. I don't know.
I do lots of 1 days.
I do lots of 1-day events.
Dude, I'm not saying that as a bad thing. I'm saying it as I don't know how you do it. It's very, very impressive.
You know that the nursery rhyme, row, row, row your boat.
Yes.
Yes.
That's how I do it.
Again, keeping with the nautical theme. Thank you.
Nice.
You don't sing. you need to start at different entry points in the song, and then you end up with many
just keep
iterations
going.
of the same song.
Yeah.
Well done, Horatio Hornblower.
I think that's the internet algorithm.
John, what's next for the circuit? I mean, you guys are really expanding. It's kind of exciting to watch it all happening in the involvement. I mean, what are you guys going to break into next? Documentaries, more YouTube stuff? I mean, see what I did there?
Yeah. Well, no, thanks for the suggestions, but I think we're juggling as many balls as is feasible at the moment. So long as it's all serving the audience, then that's all we care about, really. And how do we know this? And this is the key to it all. So the one big area that underpins everything we're doing is the audience. And we've been building something in the background called BBA Connect. Now, it's not new. It's been out since the start of the year, but we haven't shouted about it a lot. We've used it to transfer a lot of our audience from the likes of our Facebook group and so on, where we have little control. We all know the issues with Facebook, and bring them into our own communities where we can talk to them directly, where they can have a voice, they can have a say, we can hear them, and we can do something about it. So we're putting out all this content, but we want to hear from people. We want to know that we're hitting the mark. And it's great as well that if we can bring on a guest, if we put a new contributor into the magazine, that they can get feedback too, and that we can build a discussion from that. And it's becoming quite a holistic ecosystem that we're building, but without the community, a lot of that was missing. We were kind of throwing stuff out there, into the ether, and just hoping that it was hitting in the right place. Well, now with BBA Connect, now that it's an app, you can log on the web, people can send us messages, we can reply instantly. It has become a really powerful thing for us, and that's what we're working on. That's what we're building, giving people the opportunity to have their say, and we're listening.
Very cool.
That's cool. What about us, Chris? What's up with us?
When's episode 100?
I don't even know what day it is. Yeah, that's the next big thing for us is 100.
In
when
July,
is that, Chuck?
Sometime in July, depending.
What was today's number?
Oh gosh, I have to go look.
We don't have. I don't know, because we do episode and we do season and episode. So and then it's all wonky because we started out doing once a month, and then right after the second season we did twice a month, and then we said, okay, never mind, it's not working. We need to do once a week.
That's an interesting.
It's kind of like weird.
Do you do seasons? And John, throwing this to you guys too. Do you guys do seasons or do you just do episodes?
I don't know. Ask me in a year. We're doing season 1 at the moment.
We're doing seasons.
Nice.
Hey, I'd love to know how you guys break a season, and at the end of a season, do you take a break?
And are your seasons annual, like calendar year? Like how does that work?
So that's a great question, because Chris and I, we have a normal planning meeting. Yeah. And this coming year, we're actually planning a break. And it's really cool. It involves some of the folks that are involved in this particular episode of a very interesting way that we're going to take a break without losing any momentum. So, but yeah, up until now, we haven't taken a break. And that's something Chris and I kind of realized in talking to some other podcast professionals that aren't in the protection world that said, you've got to take a break. You've got to have some space. And so we've got some white noise coming that we're going to use to figure out some things that we've got coming down the pipe in terms of books and in publications and other things. What am I missing there, Chris?
Nothing really. I mean, I think we continue to get some really cool guests that either are specialists in the industry or have transitioned to generalists. And I think one of the things, I don't know if we all do it, but like, I know when I see one of your podcasts, I'll go, oh yeah, that's going to be a great podcast because that person's a great guest, and we've tried to talk to them or they're on our list to talk to. And I think it's really cool when we get to speak to different people about different things. Right. I mean, because, Ed Calderon on the circuit is going to be a way different interview than he was with us versus Coursen's Corner, because we all have different interests and we want to understand different things about those folks. So, I think we've got some really cool space interviews coming up. In other words, different parts of the space that can hopefully educate some folks, which is kind of what we like to do, and just hear about more things and go from there. So nothing massive, although Chuck keeps, how many times we hint at YouTube before we did it? I think it was probably maybe a couple months. So that's Chuck just throws the dart and then we have to follow it, right? Like he keeps saying book, right? So he's dropping the book gauntlet. So now when we take our break, that's going to be like the book.
But we've started some planning around that and we're excited about it.
Yeah, here we go.
I have another question for everyone, just real quick. Outside of protection, name 2 podcasts you listen to, and it can't be Conversation Close Protection or Coursen's Corner or anything. Just what are 2 things that you listen to that you like that you might recommend for folks that are maybe outside of the norm that you would suggest? Spencer?
I love this one podcast on the Ringer Network called The Rewatchables. And the premise is they just basically go back and watch, they talk about old movies that would otherwise, if you were like flipping through the channels and you're like, oh, this is the part where they do this, I'm in for the next like 20 minutes. And they have categories, and it's part of the Bill Simmons podcast network. It's one of my favorites. Rogan, obviously. And then every morning I listen to the Daily, their 30-minute breakdown. And then I listen to the NPR counter one, which is like 30 minutes, one's 15. That's my dog walking, coffee drinking, just news of the day type stuff. And outside of the ones that we all listen to anyway, like the Jackos and the Goggins and the Jordan Petersons and all those guys, I guarantee if we all cross-referenced our podcast playlist, we'd have at least 30% similarity.
John, what do you listen to outside of
Well, I'm a total history buff, at least when it comes to podcasts, and I like to combine the entertainment factor with the learning and the interest. And for me, Dan Collins' Hardcore History just blows me away. I mean, it blows me away that this guy can do 2 episodes a year and have the following that he's got, but it's so deeply researched.
His Genghis Khan episode is awesome.
Well, don't spoil that for me because I haven't listened to that one yet. And this is the thing, because the way it fits in with the way I work, there's no way I can listen to one whole episode straight off.
That's because the Genghis Khan episode is like 8 hours long. So
exactly. It's amazing. I listen to it, in a 20 to 40 minute burst, and it's fantastic. And it keeps me, waiting to come back, hanging on the edge of my seat. It's an amazing podcast.
Anything else that you would recommend folks add?
Well,
that's enough.
So exactly right. I mean, but if you wanted another one, again, history, it's called The Rest is History. It's a bit more of a lighthearted take, shorter episodes, and it's a discussion. So you get more than one point of view, both great podcasts.
Yeah. What about you, Chris? I know you listen to a lot of stuff too, and you listen to a lot of books on tape, but like security stuff that you're like, hey, just add this to.
So I listen to a lot of books. So non-security stuff, Jordan B. Peterson. I think he's brilliant. And I've really been enjoying reading and listening about the human psyche and psychology. And then the next one would be probably off the wall for most folks is a CFO thought leader. Talks about, chief financial officers and where they are in different spaces and different markets. And from a business perspective, I really enjoy listening to that. Nerd, I know, but it is what it is,
I like that Chuck aged himself with books on tape.
Yeah, there's that. Walking around with a cassette player. No. Okay. All right. Phelim, what about you?
2 things. One more sanguine and, that you might expect. Today I found out by Simon Whistler. It's I don't know whether it's because of how he presents the topics. Maybe it's all down to him being a great orator, but he puts together well thought through things, and I think Chuck will, listen to this one as well. Trek culture, mainly because we do like to keep up to date with the latest Star Trek goings on. And of course, we're very interested in season 2 of Lower Decks and season 4 of Discovery and season 2 of Picard. And so how else are we going to get up to date with that?
That's a good one.
Nice.
I would add to that. I love Beyond Normal Limits. Our good friend Brad Christian, the way he interviews people, I really like it. I'm a fan of the Cyberwire, kind of boring, but it's 5 to 7 minutes of what's going on in the cyber world. Really good for non-cyber folks. And I'm just kind of looking at like, what have I been listening to recently? And, like along with the Jockos and everything else, I think recently I've been listening to, the Angry Therapist.
Oh yeah. Judge.
That's great. Yeah.
I love that guy, and I love what he puts out, and I love the way he puts it out, and he kind of puts things in perspective, and that's outside of security. And I probably listen to, I'll listen to some Trek podcasts, of course, Pelham, and I also love me some Winter Soldier podcasts. Spencer and I traded a few podcasts over that. So, but
Nerd Ops, nice. Well, hey, we all showed a different dimension to ourselves, right? History, business, and Star Trek. There it is. Awesome.
So, Spencer, how do folks follow you? Where do they find you?
Spencer Coursen, just Google me. I am Spencer Coursen, the actor, on Google until my publicist gets that fixed. On Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Twitter. If you also go to thesafetytrap.com, you can read all about the book and all about the blogs, and I link the podcast and everything on there as well. So, guys, thank you so much for this. This was really great listening and learning from all of you, and let's keep this going.
Yeah, absolutely. Pelham, how do folks follow you unless you're sleeping for 5 minutes a day?
Either through all things at Circuit Magazine, all one word. So like on Twitter or Facebook, or if you want to look at the events that I do as well, CTG Intelligence, I have it on Instagram and all that good stuff as well.
Chris, how do they finding us and you?
Don't just find us at Protection. What are we? Protection Talk at Outlook, and you can catch us at Conversation Protection, LinkedIn, Instagram, all the things.
Johnny, what about you, sir? How do folks find you aside from the app, of course?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, literally, it's the best way. We put everything into the app. The podcast, the events, training, the magazine. It's all inside the app.
Awesome.
Well, Chris, okay. Kudos to you for having this idea to put all this together. Any last thoughts from you?
Hey, I'm super stoked that you guys joined. This was fun. So for our friends across the pond, we greatly appreciate you joining, and we hope that we can do this again in the future.
Awesome, guys. Hey, thanks so much. Awesome. Appreciate this.
See you.
Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, thanks so much. Pub time, boys. See you there.
One ring to bind them all. Absolutely. The podcast of podcasts. It was great. Myself, John Moss, Chris Story, Chuck Randolph, Spencer Coursen. What a combo. I'm here with Elijah Shaw. Elijah, how was that for you?
Yo, you guys did it. I mean, it was the final battle between the Avengers and Thanos in Wakanda, and then the portal started opening up, and Chuck and Chris started jumping out of it. It was amazing, bro. I'm looking forward to the sequel.
I love it, and a great testimony to these Avengers coming together and being more than the sum of their parts.
Yeah.
I love that with new technologies, Twitter Spaces, Clubhouse, it's enabling everybody to create something, and that sense of creating stuff and then collaborating, just like music artists. I think that's got fantastic mileage in it over the next few years. But this being a very, very long session, now we need to think what's next. What's next for you, Elijah?
Well, I suppose we should probably keep it short and sweet. People have invested a couple hours at a time on this. Couple couple things for me is the biggest thing is I've got a training course coming up. I love doing training courses, but with my operational schedule, it's sometimes difficult. But I'm doing a course in conjunction with ESI, and that'll be in July. That's the 23rd through 25th, and that's in Colorado. So people can find me on all the socials or shoot me an email at e.shaw@industry-icon.com, and I can give some more information about the training. And then the other thing is I'd like to invite everybody to continue to support the Protector app. So we are 5-star rated on both Amazon and on Google Play. I'm sorry, on the Google Play Store and on the Apple Store. So we've got great reviews in. I get a ton of feedback. We've made some tweaks and listen to our users in terms of making it more interactive. And so I'd invite everybody to check it out. There's a free version, but ultimately we'd love you guys to get a membership because the big membership also includes you into the North American Bodyguard Association. And of course, we've got a counterpart, which is the BBA Connect app that a majority of our UK users use. And that is brought to you guys by the British Bodyguard Association, the BBA. So again, we're trying to, that Avengers collaboration thing again. We're starting to do things over and over and using technology to kind of bring us together.
Love it. And actually, in terms of collaboration and shout outs, last week, we did a few shout outs for the people who are very, very active on the BBA Connect app. But actually, I've been really noticing some absolute gems and powerhouses on the Protector app. I'm just going to list a few first names just in case anyone doesn't want to see their second name there. Zachary, Maurice, Barrett, Latoya, Ryan, Suzanne, Maurice, Monica. Just a few people who have been really, hitting it on the app. It's great. Somebody asked a question actually today. What is the best certification for cyber? My answer was slightly nuanced, but it was nice to pop in there. You know what I mean?
For sure. And I actually caught that exchange there, and I thought that was what the app was designed for, which was someone has this question and they want to get someone who has knowledge of this certain topic, and they want to get some feedback. And it's it pulls you a little bit away from kind of the general social media sphere where, you might get the trolls, or you might get somebody just taking a guess, or, someone who then correct you because you didn't use the right punctuation, and instead gets your question answered.
In other news, coming up next week, the 27th of May, I have the Corporate Security Modernization Forum Texas. Some really great people actually coming to that, including people not from Texas, like Lee Orton. But of course, lots of familiar Texas friends. You're very welcome. Texas.mssconference.com. We, of course, are very much looking forward to our 9th of June Protective Mobility Forum. That's in the UK afternoon and the US morning and afternoon. Joe Ortera helping us out a lot with that. So
Joe,
thank you very much. And of course, I've got his book. I recommend you also read his new book. And then, 23rd, 25th of July is your training course. That's the next thing on my schedule. So please do check it out. But John would probably like us to do a shout out for the magazine as well, because
I got to say this. Yes. So the magazine comes out every month, the Circuit magazine. Well, maybe every 6 weeks or so. But one of the things that keeps us on schedule is making sure that we have very timely articles that are written for protectors, by protectors. And so if you are interested in writing for the magazine, encourage you guys to get some submissions in or talk to us about it. Some people go, hey, well, I might not be the strongest writer. Well, we've got some great editors at the Circuit. So if you've got the knowledge in your head, we'll kind of help you structure it. So again, you don't have to necessarily worry so much about the punctuation. You got to worry about the themes. And again, kind of downloading that information that's in your head into something that we would make accessible to the rest of the readers. So how should I get in touch with the Circuit magazine?
Okay, so obviously you can go through the website circuit- or dash, depends what you want to say, circuit-magazine.com. And specifically, the person most eager to receive your email is going to be our editor, John, Jon, no H, Jon at circuit-magazine.com. And yeah, we'd be really pleased to interact with you. If you've written before, we'd love to welcome you back. If you've never written, as Elijah said, we'd love to help you. So, podcast of podcasts, one ring to bind them all. I don't know if we can top this. We're going to have to try something completely different next week. Otherwise, we will definitely not top this. But this has been fantastic. We look forward to seeing you on another Circuit Magazine podcast.
You have been listening to the Circuit Magazine podcast. Be sure to subscribe and be sure to not miss an episode.